The Galactic Council always saw humans as weak, brave but primitive, their technology far behind the advanced races of the galaxy. To the powerful empires of the Council, Earth was nothing more than an ambitious but insignificant world. Even as humans made peaceful efforts to expand into distant colonies, the Council refused to take them seriously. Their diplomats were often ignored, their warnings dismissed. So when Earth established a colony on Epsilon 3, a lush, resource-rich planet on the far edge of human-claimed space, the ruthless Dravak Empire saw it as an opportunity. The Dravak were a war-hungry species, feared and respected for their military strength. To them, humanity's expansion was an insult. They wanted to send a message, one written in fire and blood. Without warning, the skies above Epsilon 3 darkened as Dravak warships emerged from hyperspace. The attack was brutal and merciless. Orbital bombardments rained down from above, turning cities into smoldering craters. The ground quaked as explosions tore through homes and infrastructure. Skyscrapers collapsed like sandcastles. The lush forests burned, the oceans boiled, and the air itself turned to ash. In just a few hours, the colony was gone. Millions of innocent lives were wiped out. There were no warnings, no demands, only destruction. When the bombardment finally stopped, the silence that followed was more terrifying than the explosions. The few survivors stumbled through the ruins in shock, burned, injured, and broken. Captain Han Jo-won stood among them, his uniform torn, his face smeared with ash and blood. He couldn't hear the distant cries of the wounded anymore. There were too few people left to cry. The colony he had sworn to protect was gone. Earth's leaders wasted no time sending a plea to the Galactic Council. They begged for intervention, for justice. They laid out the facts: an unprovoked attack, the mass slaughter of civilians, the destruction of a peaceful settlement. But the Council's response was cold and simple. This is not our concern. The message was clear: humanity was on its own. But as the Council ignored humanity's pain, Earth went silent. And that silence was far more dangerous than any threat. For weeks, no one heard from Earth. No diplomatic protests, no declarations of war. Even the usual trade communications and news broadcasts stopped. The galaxy waited for a response, but none came. The Dravak celebrated their easy victory. They mocked humanity's weakness, believing Earth was too broken and afraid to fight back. They declared Epsilon 3 their territory and sent mining ships to claim the planet's resources. But while the galaxy saw silence, something far more dangerous was happening behind the scenes. Deep beneath the red sands of Mars, Earth's war machine roared to life. Massive AI-controlled factories worked day and night, producing weapons and warships at an unprecedented rate. Secret military projects that had been in development for years were finally unleashed. Cloaking technology, experimental energy cannons, and cyber warfare systems, tools that no alien empire had ever seen, were being prepared. On Luna's military command base, Commander Kim Ha-won gathered her fleet. She was known for her calm, strategic brilliance, and for the cold fury in her heart. Beside her stood Lieutenant Park Ji-hoon, a ground soldier who had lost his entire family on Epsilon 3. He didn't speak much anymore. The rage in his eyes said everything. Humanity was not broken. They were preparing. And when they finally moved, the galaxy would never forget. It started without warning. Dravak warships patrolling their borders began to vanish, one by one. Entire fleets went dark without a single distress signal. The Dravak homeworld's communication network was crippled by cyber attacks. Weapons systems malfunctioned. Defense grids failed. Panic spread like wildfire. And then the human fleet arrived. They came in sleek, black warships equipped with cloaking devices and weapons no one had ever seen. The KSS Thunderstrike led the charge, cutting through the Dravak Navy like a blade through paper. Human energy cannons ripped apart enemy battleships with terrifying precision. Missiles evaded countermeasures with impossible agility. Dravak admirals, once so arrogant, screamed for reinforcements, but none came. On the ground, human drop pods fell like meteors. Park Ji-hoon's squad landed in the heart of a Dravak military base, taking the enemy by surprise. In the chaos of close-quarters combat, Jae-hoon fought like a man possessed. His rifle spat death, his movements fast and merciless. Human soldiers pushed forward without fear, their rage driving them. The Dravak, for the first time, knew terror. It began with the lights. City after city fell into darkness as their energy grids collapsed. Communication systems crashed. Defense satellites turned against their own ships or shut down entirely. Entire networks were crippled by an unseen enemy, a ghost in their systems, striking without mercy or warning. The Dravak's most secure military databases were wiped clean. Missile silos refused to launch. Orbital defenses were locked out. Panic spread like wildfire. And then the human fleet arrived. Sleek, black warships slid out of the void, their hulls shimmering as they decloaked. They moved with deadly precision, silent and terrifying. The KSS Thunderstrike led the charge, a massive, ominous vessel bristling with weaponry no one in the galaxy had ever seen before. When it fired, the darkness of space exploded with light. A single barrage from its energy cannons reduced an entire Dravak battleship to a burning hulk in seconds. Debris scattered, and what was left of the crew never even had time to scream. The Dravak Navy scrambled to respond, but they were already too late. Human ships danced through their lines, faster and more coordinated than anything they had ever faced. Missiles twisted around defenses with impossible agility, striking with pinpoint accuracy. Railguns fired slugs that shattered even the toughest armor. The Dravak's vaunted fleets were being torn apart with horrifying ease. As the battle raged in orbit, fire rained from the sky. Human drop pods streaked toward the surface of Draven Prime like falling meteors. They slammed into military installations with bone-shattering force, and from the wreckage rose the soldiers of Earth. Park Ji-hoon hit the ground running. His boots crunched over burning debris as his squad poured out behind him. The air was thick with smoke and the distant screams of the dying. Dravak soldiers scrambled to mount a defense, but the humans were already on them. Ji-hoon's rifle spat fire, and the first wave of enemy troops crumpled before they could react. His squad moved like a single deadly organism, covering each other's flanks and pushing forward without hesitation. A Dravak officer barked orders from behind a barricade, but Jae-hoon didn't give him a chance. He broke into a sprint, sliding into cover just as a burst of plasma scorched the ground where he'd stood. In one smooth motion, he rose, aimed, and fired. The officer dropped, his command cut off mid-shout. The remaining Dravak panicked, and Jae-hoon's squad advanced mercilessly. They cleared the street in minutes. The bodies of alien soldiers lay sprawled across the rubble, and the humans pushed on. Every step was measured. Every shot counted. Jae-hoon didn't speak unless necessary. His focus was absolute. He had lost his family on Epsilon 3. Now he was making sure the Dravak paid for every life they had taken. Elsewhere on the battlefield, human forces struck with terrifying efficiency. Advanced exosuits turned ordinary soldiers into walking tanks. Drones darted through the air, raining down precision fire. Stealth teams infiltrated key facilities, taking out high-ranking officers and sabotaging defenses. The Dravak military was crumbling, their once impenetrable strongholds reduced to smoking ruins. Desperate and terrified, the Dravak High Command screamed for help. They begged the Galactic Council to intervene, pleading for protection against this relentless human onslaught. But the Council hesitated, because for the first time, they were afraid. The footage pouring in from Draven Prime was unlike anything they had ever seen. They watched as human warships dismantled entire fleets with ruthless efficiency. They saw soldiers fighting with a level of discipline and ferocity that the galaxy had never witnessed. And above all, they saw something terrifying. A species that had been underestimated for too long, now unleashing its full strength. The council debated furiously. Some argued for immediate intervention, warning that if humanity wasn't stopped now, no one would be safe. Others urged caution, fearful of provoking the humans any further. Whispers spread of Earth's new weapons, of ships that could vanish from sensors and soldiers who fought like demons. The fear grew with every report. And still, the humans gave no demands, no ultimatums, no offers of surrender. They struck with silence and purpose, and the galaxy trembled. On the surface of Draven Prime, Park Jae-hoon's squad reached their objective, a heavily fortified command center. The building was already in chaos, with flames licking at its walls and panicked officers trying to evacuate. Jae-hoon didn't wait. He breached the entrance with a single blast, leading his team inside. The blast ripped through the bunker, sending debris and fire skyward. The enemy guns fell silent, but when the smoke cleared, Jae-hoon was gone. On the Thunderstrike, the battle was nearing its breaking point. The ship's hull was battered and scorched. Half their weapons were offline, but they were close, so close, to the Judgment Spear. "Commander, the platform is locking onto Earth," the tactical officer cried. HFY made her decision. All power to forward weapons. Target the core. The Thunderstrike surged forward. Dravak ships closed in, but it was too late. The human ship's cannons roared one last time, unleashing a barrage of pure destruction. The energy sphere at the heart of the Judgment Spear began to destabilize, flickering wildly. Impact in 3, 2, 1. The platform detonated. The shockwave rippled through space, tearing through the remaining Dravak fleet. Fire and debris scattered in all directions. The Thunderstrike spun out of control, alarms blaring, but HFY didn't care. The Judgment Spear was gone. Earth was safe. On Draven Prime, the surviving humans pushed forward with renewed fury. Jae-hoon's sacrifice had given them the edge they needed. The Dravak lines collapsed. Their soldiers surrendered by the thousands. But for Jae-hoon's squad, there was no celebration. They found his body among the rubble, broken, burned, but with a peace on his face that spoke of duty fulfilled. Back on the Thunderstrike, the damage was extensive. The ship limped away from the battlefield, but the crew's spirits were high. They had won. HFY stood on the bridge, staring out at the stars. The cost had been high, too high, but the Dravak Empire was broken, and Earth had survived. As she looked at the destruction they had wrought, one thought stayed with her. The war wasn't over. Not yet. And the galaxy would never forget what humanity was capable of. The Judgment Spear's core burned with growing energy, a swirling mass of destruction aimed directly at Earth. The platform's countdown had begun. If it fired, humanity's homeworld would become nothing but ashes drifting through space. On the battered bridge of the KSS Thunderstrike, Kim Ha-won's face was streaked with sweat and soot. Every screen flashed red. Every alarm screamed for attention. But she kept her eyes locked on the enemy. "Commander, we're out of time," the tactical officer cried. "The platform's charging sequence is almost complete." HFY's heart pounded in her chest. Their fleet was in ruins. The Thunderstrike was barely holding together. Most of their forces were gone, and those that remained were outnumbered and overwhelmed. Every second brought them closer to defeat. The Dravak's revenge was almost complete. And then the signal came. "Commander, I've got something on long-range sensors. It's one of ours." HFY's eyes snapped to the display just as the KSS Vengeance emerged from the void. It was the largest warship humanity had ever built, a dreadnought-class behemoth, bristling with experimental weapons and armor unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. For years, it had been Earth's greatest secret, hidden away in the shipyards beneath the surface of Mars. Now, it had come to fight. As it entered the battlefield, the Vengeance wasted no time. "Vengeance is locking onto the Dravak fleet," the tactical officer reported, his voice filled with awe. The first shot fired was like nothing the Dravak had ever encountered. A beam of pure, concentrated energy sliced through space, tearing through an entire Dravak cruiser as if it were paper. The explosion that followed sent shockwaves across the battlefield. The Vengeance's missile bays opened, unleashing a storm of smart munitions. The missiles twisted and danced through the void, seeking their targets with relentless precision. Dravak capital ships burst apart in brilliant flashes of fire and metal. On the Dravak command vessel, panic spread like wildfire. Where did that ship come from? Their captain shrieked. Destroy it. All weapons. Fire. But it was already too late. The Vengeance moved through the battlefield like an unstoppable force. Every weapon that fired at it was either deflected by its advanced shielding or absorbed by its armor. Its return fire was devastating. Railguns fired slugs at near-light speed, smashing through Dravak ships with kinetic force so great they split apart on impact. Plasma cannons turned enemy squadrons into molten debris. The Dravak fleet, once so confident in their strength, began to break. Ships turned to flee, only to be cut down before they could escape. Their formation collapsed. The Judgment Spear's defenses fell one by one. "Commander," the comms officer called, barely able to contain his excitement. "The Vengeance is hailing us." "Patch them through," Ha-1 ordered, her eyes never leaving the battlefield. Beside her stood Lieutenant Park Ji-hoon, a soldier forged in pain and loss. He had lost his entire family when Epsilon 3 burned. His parents, his younger sister, all gone in the blink of an eye. He didn't talk much anymore. He didn't need to. The quiet, focused rage in his every movement spoke for him. When he trained harder than anyone. When he fought like a man with nothing left to lose. They weren't here for revenge. They were here for justice. As the Dravak celebrated, strange things began happening along their borders. Patrol ships started disappearing without a trace. Entire convoys went silent, their last transmissions filled with confusion and fear. Outposts found their supply lines severed. Communication networks suffered inexplicable failures. The Dravak Navy sent investigation teams. None returned. Panic began to spread. But the Dravak leaders were arrogant. They dismissed the warnings, calling them mechanical failures or pirate attacks. They refused to believe humans were behind it. After all, how could a primitive race possibly strike so efficiently? They had no idea that Earth's silence had never been surrender. It had been preparation. And then humanity struck. The attack came without warning. The first target was the Dravak's largest border outpost, a heavily fortified station surrounded by warships. It was meant to be impenetrable. But when the human fleet emerged from its cloaked approach, it became a slaughterhouse. The KSS Thunderstrike led the charge. A sleek, black warship bristling with experimental weaponry. Its energy cannons fired beams of searing light that cut through Dravak cruisers like paper. Missiles twisted and danced through space, dodging countermeasures with terrifying ease. Human ships moved with speed and precision that no one had anticipated. In minutes, the Dravak fleet was in chaos. Admirals screamed for reinforcements, but their calls went unanswered. Communications were down. Their ship's systems glitched and failed as Earth's cyber warfare teams unleashed havoc. Weapons refused to fire. Shields dropped without reason. Engines sputtered and died. And then the human ground forces landed. Drop pods rained from the sky like falling stars. The Dravak soldiers waiting on the surface expected a slow, disorganized assault. What they got was hell. Human soldiers poured from the pods in tight, disciplined formations. Their weapons were faster, their tactics sharper. They fought with a ruthlessness the Dravak had never seen. At the forefront was Park Ji-hoon. He moved through the battlefield like a ghost, his rifle spitting death with every burst. Dravak soldiers fell before they even saw him. When his squad was pinned down by enemy fire, Ji-hoon didn't hesitate. He flanked the enemy position alone, taking them out with brutal efficiency. His comrades followed his lead, their own fury burning just as hot. Within hours, the outpost fell. The Dravak survivors begged for mercy. They received none. News of the attack spread like wildfire. The Galactic Council watched in shock as reports flooded in. The Dravak Empire, one of the most powerful militaries in the galaxy, was being torn apart by the very species they had called weak. The Council held emergency meetings, their members divided. Some wanted to intervene. Others wanted to wait, too afraid to draw Earth's wrath. But Earth wasn't finished. As the Council debated, human forces pushed deeper into Dravak territory. Shipyards were destroyed before they could launch a single vessel. Supply lines were cut. Planets surrendered without a fight, their populations terrified by the stories of human soldiers. Entire fleets were wiped out without firing a shot. And still, Earth said nothing. No demands, no negotiations, only silence and death. The Dravak Empire began to crumble. Desperate, their leaders finally reached out to the Galactic Council for aid. But the Council hesitated. They had never seen Earth's full strength before, and now they feared it. Reports spoke of ships with impossible weapons, soldiers who fought like demons, entire armadas erased in minutes. And behind it all stood Kim Ha-won and Park Ji-hoon, two leaders driven not by rage, but by justice. The Dravak had wanted to silence humanity. Instead, they had awoken something far more dangerous. And the galaxy would never forget it. It started without warning. The cold emptiness of space became a graveyard. Dravak ships patrolling their borders disappeared without a trace. One by one, their last signals filled with confusion and fear. Entire fleets went dark. No distress calls. No survivors. The Dravak High Command tried to downplay the incidents, calling them mechanical failures or pirate raids. But deep down, they knew something far worse was happening. And then their homeworld, Draven Prime, went silent. The Dravak Empire, once so confident, was now on the brink of collapse. Their leaders begged the Galactic Council for help. But the Council hesitated. They had never seen Earth's full strength, and now they feared it. Reports spoke of human warships with unstoppable weapons, of soldiers who fought like demons, of entire fleets erased in minutes. The Council sent envoys to Earth, pleading for a ceasefire. They received a single message in return. You ignored our cries for peace. Now hear our silence in war. The Dravak grew desperate. With their empire crumbling, they prepared their ultimate weapon, an orbital bombardment platform capable of wiping out entire planets. Their target, Earth. Commander Kim Ha-won knew they couldn't wait. With most of their fleet still engaged, she led a strike force of fast attack ships to intercept the platform. The battle in space was fierce and chaotic. The Thunderstrike took heavy damage, its hull torn and burning. But Ha-won refused to retreat. On the ground, Park Ji-hoon's squad pushed forward against overwhelming odds. When his team was pinned down by enemy fire, Ji-hoon made a choice. He charged the enemy position, a grenade in each hand. The explosion shook the battlefield. When the dust settled, the enemy was gone. So was Ji-hoon. As the orbital platform charged its weapon, humanity made one final stand. Earth's forces were battered, their ships heavily damaged. It seemed like all hope was lost. But then the KSS Vengeance arrived. Earth's first Dreadnought-class warship, armed with experimental weaponry, emerged from hyperspace like an avenging god. Its cannons unleashed beams of pure energy, slicing through the Dravak fleet. Missiles rained down with pinpoint accuracy. The Vengeance targeted the orbital platform, and with a single, devastating shot, destroyed it. The galaxy watched in stunned silence. The Dravak Empire surrendered unconditionally. Earth didn't demand territory. They demanded justice. The Dravak paid reparations for every life lost. The Galactic Council, humbled and afraid, offered humanity a seat at their table. But Kim Ha-won refused. We don't need your approval, she said. We only needed to be heard. Back on Earth, memorials were built for the fallen. Park Ji-hoon's name was among them. Humanity mourned their dead, but they stood taller than ever. And across the galaxy, one truth became clear. Earth would never be silent again. For weeks, there was no word from Earth, no diplomatic messages, no protests, no threats. The entire planet had gone silent, and in that silence, the galaxy saw fear. The Dravak Empire celebrated their so-called victory, believing humanity had been too broken, too devastated to fight back. They held grand parades on their homeworld, their leaders boasting of the easy conquest of Epsilon 3. News channels across the galactic network praised their decisive strike against Earth's expansion. To the Dravak, humanity was finished, a beaten species that wouldn't dare rise again. But they were wrong. Far from the watchful eyes of the galaxy, beneath the rust-colored sands of Mars, Earth's war machine roared to life. Massive underground factories, controlled by advanced AIs, worked without rest. Day and night, they churned out warships faster than any alien species had ever seen. The shipyards of Luna built sleek, black vessels equipped with cloaking devices and weapons no one had ever faced before. Energy cannons that could pierce the hulls of even the largest enemy battleships. Missiles with adaptive AI guidance systems that no countermeasure could escape. Stealth drones and cyber warfare units capable of crippling entire planetary networks. And the soldiers were preparing, too. In hidden training facilities on Earth and its colonies, elite human troops drilled relentlessly. They honed their skills in brutal, unforgiving simulations, ones based on the hellish reality of Epsilon 3's fall. They learned every Dravak weakness, every tactic, every strength, and they trained not just to fight, but to win. At the heart of this preparation stood Commander Kim Ha-won. She was a legend within Earth's military, a tactical genius with a reputation for staying calm even in the face of overwhelming odds. But the loss of Epsilon 3 had changed her. The fire in her heart now burned hotter than ever, and the cold fury in her eyes sent chills through even the most seasoned officers. She wasn't just fighting for Earth, she was fighting for every life the Dravak had taken. The screen flickered to life, revealing Admiral Ethan Cross. His face was calm, his voice steady. "We've got this, Thunderstrike. Focus on clearing out the stragglers. We'll handle the platform." Ha-won nodded, relief washing over her. "Good hunting, Admiral." The Vengeance turned its full attention to the Judgment Spear. The platform's weapon core was nearly fully charged, its deadly energy swirling with terrifying intensity. But the humans weren't going to give it the chance to fire. "Target the core," Cross commanded. "All batteries, fire." The Vengeance unleashed its full arsenal. Beams of light and waves of missiles converged on the Judgment Spear's heart. The first volley cracked its outer defenses, sending fragments of metal spinning into space. The second tore through its weapon systems, silencing its cannons. The third struck the core directly. For a moment, nothing happened. And then the Judgment Spear began to collapse. The energy within its core destabilized, growing brighter and more violent. A low rumble echoed across the battlefield as the platform's structure buckled. The core's containment field failed, and in one final brilliant flash, the Judgment Spear exploded. The shockwave rippled outward, swallowing the remaining Dravak ships in its path. The battlefield fell silent. On the Galactic Council's screens, the entire galaxy watched in stunned silence. They had mocked humanity. They had called them weak, primitive, unworthy of notice. But now they saw the truth. Earth had risen from the ashes of Epsilon 3. They had faced an empire and brought it to its knees. And with the destruction of the Judgment Spear, humanity had proved that they were not just survivors. They were a force to be reckoned with. On the bridge of the Thunderstrike, Ha-won sat quietly as the cheers of her crew filled the air. The battle was over. The Dravak threat had been eliminated, but the cost had been high. Later, when the battlefield was cleared and the wounded were tended to, Haiwan stood before the memorial wall. Ji-hoon's name was etched there, alongside thousands of others who had given their lives for Earth's survival. "We did it," she whispered, her fingers brushing his name. "We made them remember." In the end, the galaxy had underestimated humanity, and they would never make that mistake again. The Dravak Empire fell with a single message: unconditional surrender. Their once mighty fleets had been reduced to smoldering wreckage, their homeworld left defenseless, their ultimate weapon turned to dust. The proud conquerors who had laughed at humanity's desperation were now begging for mercy. When the surrender signal reached the human fleet, there was no celebration, just a quiet, exhausted relief. The war was over. But for those who had fought and bled, the price of victory was carved deep into their hearts. Earth did not ask for conquest. Humanity had no desire to rule the stars. They demanded justice. The Dravak were forced to pay reparations, vast sums of resources and wealth, to compensate for the millions of lives lost on Epsilon 3 and every battle since. Entire Dravak worlds were demilitarized, their fleets stripped down, their ambitions crushed. But humanity wanted something more than vengeance. They wanted remembrance. On the shattered ruins of Epsilon 3, the first memorial was built. It stood tall among the scorched earth and broken cities, a monument of black stone etched with the names of the fallen. Among them was Park Ji-hoon, the soldier who had given everything for justice. His name was carved in bold letters, a reminder of the courage humanity had shown when the galaxy turned its back. The Galactic Council, once so dismissive of Earth's plight, watched in uneasy silence as humanity reshaped the balance of power. When they finally extended an offer, inviting Earth to take a seat among the great powers of the galaxy, it was seen by many as a gesture of respect. But to those who had fought, it was too little, too late. Kim Haiwan stood before the Council's emissaries, her expression cold and unyielding. "We don't need your approval," she said, her voice carrying the weight of every life lost. "We only needed to be heard." The Council's members, once so sure of their superiority, could only nod. They had underestimated Earth, and now they understood the cost of their arrogance. Humanity had proven its strength not through conquest, but through resilience. They had faced extinction and stood unbroken. Back on Earth, the rebuilding began. Cities rose from the ashes, stronger than before. Mars shipyards expanded, producing vessels that would ensure humanity was never caught defenseless again. The KSS Vengeance became a symbol, not of war, but of resolve. Every ship that followed bore the names of the fallen, a silent promise that their sacrifice would never be forgotten. The fighting was brutal and fast. In the narrow corridors, the humans' superior training and technology gave them the edge. Ji-hoon moved like a shadow, his every shot precise and lethal. By the time they reached the control room, the remaining Dravak officers were already trying to surrender. Ji-hoon ignored their pleas. He focused on the terminal in front of him, the heart of the Dravak's planetary defenses. A few quick commands, and those defenses fell. Anti-aircraft systems powered down. Orbital shields collapsed. In their place, human ships descended through the atmosphere, bringing fire and vengeance with them. Outside, the sky burned. As the humans secured their position, a message finally arrived from Earth. It was short, simple, and terrifying. "We are not weak. We are not broken. You wanted war. Now you have it." The Galactic Council watched in silence. The Dravak homeworld was falling. Their military was shattered. Their leaders were in hiding. And the humans were just getting started. The Dravak Empire was falling apart. Their fleets were nothing but wreckage drifting through the void. Their armies had been routed. Their colonies burned. Panic spread like wildfire. Entire systems began to rebel, sensing the Empire's weakness. But a cornered beast is always the most dangerous, and the Dravak were desperate. In their desperation, they turned to a weapon they had sworn never to use. Hidden deep in their territory was the Judgment Spear, an orbital bombardment platform capable of annihilating entire planets. It was a monstrous creation, a station bristling with enough firepower to wipe Earth from existence with a single strike. And now, Earth was their target. Kim Ha-won knew they couldn't wait. If the Judgment Spear fired, everything they had fought for would be lost. There would be no more colonies, no more families, no more humanity. With time running out, she assembled a strike force of the fastest, deadliest ships Earth had left. The KSS Thunderstrike led the way, its hull still scarred from the last battle. As they closed the distance, the Judgment Spear loomed ahead, a massive silhouette against the stars, surrounded by the last remnants of the Dravik fleet. Hundreds of ships stood guard, determined to protect their last hope of vengeance. It was a fortress in space, and the humans were running straight into the fire. The battle began in an instant. The void erupted with light as energy cannons and missile salvos crossed the distance. Human ships weaved through the chaos, faster and more agile than their Dravik counterparts. The Thunderstrike tore into the enemy lines, its weapons roaring with fury. One Dravik cruiser exploded in a flash of flame and twisted metal. Another broke apart under relentless fire. But the Dravik fought with the desperation of the damned. Swarms of fighters poured from their carriers, diving straight into the human fleet. Missiles slammed into human ships, breaking their formations. The Thunderstrike shuddered as a blast ripped through its hull, alarms screaming through the bridge. Status report. Ha-won barked, gripping the edge of her console. Shields at 30%. Her tactical officer called back. We've lost the portside railgun. Hold the line, she ordered. We have to get to that platform. The Judgment Spear began to power up. Energy gathered at its core, a growing sphere of destruction. If it reached full charge, Earth was finished. Ha-won's heart pounded in her chest. There was no room for failure. Meanwhile, on the surface of Draven Prime, the battle raged on. Park Ji-hoon led his squad through the ruins of a burning city. The air was thick with smoke and the metallic scent of blood. They were running low on ammunition, and the Dravik kept coming. Every corner they turned brought another wave of enemy soldiers, their plasma rifles spitting deadly fire. Ji-hoon, we're pinned down, one of his men shouted, taking cover behind a crumbling wall. Ji-hoon's mind worked fast. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but they couldn't stop. Not now. He spotted the enemy position, a fortified bunker raining fire down on his squad. They needed to take it out, or they were dead. Cover me, he said, his voice calm despite the chaos. Before anyone could stop him, Ji-hoon broke into a sprint. Plasma bolts hissed past him, burning holes in the ground. He didn't slow down. His boots pounded against the rubble as he closed the distance, a grenade clutched tightly in his hand. Ji-hoon. No. Someone screamed behind him. He didn't listen. He reached the bunker and dove forward, hurling the grenade through the firing slit. For a heartbeat, there was silence. Then the world exploded. But for those who had fought, the scars remained. Kim Ha-won often found herself at the memorial wall, fingers tracing the names of friends she would never see again. And when she reached Park Ji-hoon's name, she would close her eyes and remember the quiet determination in his face, the fire in his heart. In the end, the galaxy learned one undeniable truth: Earth would never be silent again.